The Nameless City by H.P. Lovecraft. When I drew nigh the Nameless City, I knew it was accursed. I was traveling in a parched and terrible valley, under the moon, and afar I saw it protruding uncannily, above the sands as parts of a corpse may protrude from an ill-made grave. Fear spoke from all the age-worn stones of this hoary survivor of the deluge, the great-grandmother of the eldest pyramid, and a viewless aura repelled me, and bade me retreat from antique and sinister secrets that no man should see, and no man else had ever dared to see. Remote in the desert of Arabia lies the Nameless City, crumbling and inarticulate, and its low walls nearly hidden by the sands of uncounted ages. It must have been thus before the first stones of the Memphis were laid, and while the bricks of Babylon were yet unbaked. There is no legend so old as to give it a name, or to recall that it was ever alive. But it is told of in whispers round campfires, and muttered about by grandmas in the tents of the sheiks, so that all the tribes shun it without wholly knowing why. It was of this place that Abdul Azrahad, the mad poet, dreamed on the night before he sang his unexplainable couplet. That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die. I should have known the Arabs had good reason for shunning the Nameless City. The city told of in strange tales, but seen by no living man. Yet I defied them, and went into the untrodden waste with my camel. I alone have seen it, and that is why no other face bears such hideous lines of fear as mine. Why no other man shivers so horribly when the night wind rattles the windows. When I came upon it, in that ghastly stillness of unending sleep, it looked at me, chilly from the rays of a cold moon amidst the desert heat. And as I returned its look, I forgot my triumph in finding it, and stopped still with my camel to wait for dawn. For hours I waited, till the east grew gray and the stars faded, and the gray turned to rosier light edged with gold. I heard a moaning, and saw a storm of sand stirring among the antique stone. Though the sky was clear, and the vast reaches of the desert still. Then suddenly, above the desert's far rim came the blazing edge of the sun, seen through the tiny sandstorm, which was passing away. And in my fevered state, I fancied that from some remote depth there came a crash of musical metal, to hail the fiery disk as Memnon hails it from the banks of the Nile. My ears rang, and my imagination seethed as I led my camel slowly across the sands to the unvocal stone place. That place too old for Egypt and Meroe to remember. That place which I alone of living men have seen. In and amongst the shapeless foundations of houses and palaces I wandered, finding never a carving or inscription to tell of those men, if men they were, who built the city and dwelt therein so long ago. The antiquity of the spot was unwholesome, and I longed to encounter some sign or device to prove that the city was indeed fashioned by mankind. There were certain proportions and dimensions in the ruins, which I did not like. I had with me many tools, and dug much within the walls, of the obliterated edifices, but progress was slow, and nothing significant was revealed. When night and the moon returned, I felt a chill wind, which brought new fear, so that I did not dare to remain in the city. And as I went outside the antique walls to sleep, a small, sighing sandstorm gathered behind me, blowing over the gray stones, though the moon was bright and most of the desert still. I awakened just as dawn from a pageant of horrible dreams, my ears ringing as, from some metallic peal, I saw the sun peering readily through the last gust of the little sandstorm, and hovered over the Nameless City, and marked the quietness of the rest of the landscape. Once more I ventured within those brooding ruins that swelled beneath the sand like an ogre under a coverlet, and again dug the walls and the bygone streets and the outlines of nearly vanished buildings. I saw the city that had been mighty indeed, and wondered at the sources of its greatness. To myself I pictured all the splendor of ages so distant that Chudley could not recall it, and thought of Sarnath, the doomed, that stood in the land of Manar when mankind was young, and of Ib, that was carven of gray stone before mankind existed. All at once I came upon where the bedrock rose stark through the sands and formed a low cliff, and here I saw with joy what seemed to promise future traces of antediluvian people, hewn ruddily on the faces of cliffs where the unmistakable facades of several small, squat rock houses or temples, whose interiors might preserve many secrets of ages too remote for calculation, though sandstorm had long since effaced any carving that may have been outside. Very low and sand-choked were all the dark apertures near me, but I cleared one with my spade and crawled through it, carrying a torch to reveal whatever mysteries it might hold. When I was inside, I saw the cavern was indeed a temple, and behind plain signs of the race that had lived and worshipped before the desert was a desert. Primitive altars, pillars, and niches, all curiously low, were not absent, and though I saw no sculptures nor frescoes, there were many singular stones, clearly shaped into symbols by artificial means. The lowness of the chiseled chamber was very strange, for I could hardly more than kneel upright, but the area was so great that my torch showed only part at a time. I shuddered oddly. In some of the far corners, for certain altars and stones suggested forgotten rites of terrible, revolting, and inexplicable nature, and made me wonder what manner of man could have made and frequented such a temple. When I had seen all the place contained, I crawled out again, avid to find what the other temple might yield. Night had now approached, yet the tangible things I had seen made curiosity stronger than fear, so that I did not flee from the long moon-cast shadows that had daunted me when I first saw the Nameless City. In the twilight, I cleared another aperture, and with a new torch crawled into it, finding a more vague stones and symbols, though nothing more definite than the other temple had contained. The room was just as low, but much less broad, ending in a very narrow passage, crowded with obscure and cryptical shrines. About those shrines, I was prying when the noise of wind and of my camel outside broke through the stillness and drew me forth to see what could have frightened the beast. The moon was gleaming vividly over the primeval ruins, lighting a dense cloud of sand that seemed to blow by. A strong but decreasing wind from some point along the cliff ahead of me. I knew it was the chilly, sandy wind which had disturbed the camel, and was about to lead him to a place of better shelter when I chanced to glance up and saw that there was no wind atop the cliff. This astonished me and made me fearful again, but I immediately recalled the sudden local wind I had seen and heard before at sunrise and sunset, and judged it was a normal thing. I decided that it came from the rock fissure leading to a cave, and watched the troubled sand to trace it to its source. Soon perceiving that it came from the black orifice of the temple